Welcome back. Now that we're about halfway through our journey to collect all of the souls of the Great Old Ones, I think now would be an appropriate time to do a little bit of backtracking and look at some stuff that we've missed. Also maybe demo some of the new armor that we found in Iron Keep. Currently, we're wearing the dark armor, the Elan Captain Helm, the penal handcuffs, and Pate's boots. Now, way back, at the very beginning of the game, we originally encountered some ogres in this area. However, at the time, we had nothing but our fists and/or a tiny dagger. Now that we're a little bit more well-equipped, I think it's time to go and settle the score. Ogres are fearsome opponents, but they are very weak to fire. Each of their blows packs a huge punch, and they come out very quickly for such a fat-looking thing. Our reward for killing this ogre is the Stone Ring. The Stone Ring is an interesting accessory that allows your attacks to do more damage to poise, essentially making it easier to stagger people you're attacking. It's a pretty useful ring. It's especially helpful on weapons that attack quickly in succession. There's also some gold pine resin hidden over here. We could have technically gotten that at the very beginning of the game if we were quick about it, but that would have been a little bit too much risk and not enough reward to really look into seriously. The ogres in the area do not respawn. So, please dash any hopes you have of some sort of perverse grinding method at the very beginning of the game. Now, for the ogre down here, this is actually a trap. If you listen carefully and look carefully, you can see that there's another ogre hiding out behind there. Even if you're confident in your skills, at the very beginning of the game, it's pretty likely that you just don't have the raw numbers from equipment to deal with two of these guys at once. I would say that the primary weakness that the ogres have is their tendency to put their whole body into their swings. Sometimes they will end their combo with a full body slam that will leave them prone for a good few seconds. They get up pretty quickly, but not quickly enough that you can't take advantage of that opening. Range is also probably the safest way to deal with them. And as mentioned before, they are very weak to fire. That's all three ogres cleared out, so let's go check and see what that guy was examining. A boat? A coffin? Maybe this will take us somewhere? The nature of your being has changed. I can't tell any difference. Whatever. This won't be the first time that jumping into a coffin will have somewhat inexplicable results in this series, but at least in the last game, something actually happened. With that little diversion out of the way, let's go check in with Millibeth, who we haven't spoken to in a very long time. I would chat with the Firekeepers, but I'm pretty sure they would still just laugh. Make weird old lady noises. Their housemaid is much better conversation.
You have proven yourself to the forest. We have little to offer, except perhaps these. May they bring fortune to your journey in some small way.
Our reward for killing all 3 ogres is the somewhat underwhelming handmaid's ladle. It has extremely low base attack and no scaling whatsoever. Doesn't have a particularly compelling attack pattern either. There must be some way to make use of it, but right now we just don't have the means. Since we've got some downtime, I'm here to demonstrate a couple other weapons that, until now, we haven't been able to use. The Twin Blade, which requires a massive dexterity investment, is a very unique weapon with a very unique attack pattern. It's very strong at staggering enemies with its multiple hits, but it tends to suffer at crowd control. And it's also fairly prone to breaking quickly. Pate's Spear, which is honestly requires even more dexterity, is a pretty normal spear except for its strong attacks. You'll actually do a little bit of a charge. That gives the weapon quite a bit of reach, but it's also a little inflexible. Generally speaking, I would much rather have the normal spear's wide sweep, but it definitely has its uses. Alright, with the ogres out of the way, we have another bonus area to look at here. However, this bonus area is much more difficult. Difficult to the point where I'm actually having trouble deciding which spells I want to take with me. I eventually decide on Toxic Cloud just because there's not a lot of situations where Toxic Cloud isn't good to have. You may remember when we were exploring the Forest of Fallen Giants the last time, we came across this area to the bottom of the big chamber below the Cardinal Tower. This rather unwelcoming looking place is home to giant spouts of fire and fire salamanders. You may recall that the fire salamanders were what were shooting fireballs at us in that little cave where we found the fire longsword. Now, regrettably, the safest way to take them out is from a distance. However, as you can see, they are somewhat durable. So if you want to tackle this area, bring at least a couple of bolts or arrows with you. Believe me, there is a reason that I'm wasting time doing this instead of just going down and fighting it. Almost there. Come on. Death by 1,000 wooden sticks. Now, getting down there is a challenge in and of itself. I recommend equipping all of the minus fall damage equipment that you have. Even with both the Jester's Tights and the ring, we still took a pretty decent chunk of damage from that fall. So if you're not well equipped, that can knock out most of your health bar in one shot, if not just kill you. However, there's no more falls to make in this area, so I'll keep the Jester's boots on, just because they're pretty good pants in and of themselves, but the ring can go back off. Like any good bonus area, this area is filled with rare goodies. The Hawk's ring in particular is a very unique ring with a very unique purpose. When equipped, it will extend the range of your arrows. The Flame Quartz ring is not especially exciting, but it's better than the one we have. Alright. This is why you need to be super careful when you engage these guys on foot. Those fireballs hurt. Fireballs hurt a lot. I decided, maybe we should equip that Flame Quartz ring. Maybe that would be helpful against the fire-spewing lizards. It would also be helpful not to roll into these weird flame gouts, but sometimes panic takes over. This is a different sniping spot you can use. However, I am quick to point out that second lizard that just killed us is not visible from up here. Alright. No need to go through that again. I would honestly say that these fire salamanders are probably the strongest enemies in the game. I can think of no other set of enemies that is so difficult to even fight, really. Like, there are definitely enemies that are hard to kill, and there are enemies that will kill you quickly, but there's basically none that fall so squarely into both categories at once. Fortunately, they are weak to poison. Flash Sweat can also help quite a bit, because it will severely reduce the damage you take from fireballs. However, you can still die if you're not careful, so don't think you're invincible. The best way to take this guy out is probably just hiding at the top of the hill. Even closing the distance is hard, because they have very good tracking on their fireballs, and they do it quite often. I tried to go for a jumping attack there, but I ended up just landing on his back and not doing anything. I mean, it was sort of stylish, but it didn't really serve any purpose. fire spouts in this room are equally inexplicable and equally annoying. They make seeing what you're doing pretty hard, especially when your screen is filled half the time with the fireballs from the salamanders. It's not particularly glamorous or valorous, but just take your time, slow and steady, play it safe, and you'll get through. Probably. That works slightly better, but these things have so much health it wasn't even enough to finish him off without another poke. Down this tunnel that lizard was guarding, we find more lizards. This appears to be their nest. I think some of these at least might be eggs. Now, this lizard has a different moveset from the two upstairs. Instead of spouting long-range fireballs, it will instead go for something a lot more dangerous. It's still quite capable of breathing fire, of course. However, the real danger doesn't come from the fire. The real danger comes from when you get close. The salamanders tend to favor moves that are quick to come out, very powerful, and completely ignore shield blocking. The tongue swipe isn't so bad, that tends to have a tell. However, when it simply charges you, that's almost impossible to see coming because the wind-up animation just looks like it's continuing to move forward, like normal. These enemies also have an odd habit of getting stuck in the ground, which can just make things even more of a mess. With that one down, the way is now clear once more. Unfortunately, there's the one that was originally spitting fire at us back there. We're pretty much out of poison, so there's not much to do except fight this guy the old-fashioned way. Might as well just two-hand the spear. It's not like the shield is going to help at all. That is probably their most dangerous attack. They'll do basically a flying leap that goes a huge, huge distance. It has an enormous hitbox, and it's just generally a pain in the ass to deal with. We were so close! The treasure was right there! Alright. Fast forwarding time a little bit, we now return to a reality where all of those lizards are dead. They drop cracked red-eye orbs if you are feeling masochistic and want to farm those. It's really not a good place to do it. Just listen to me, please. The ultimate reward for coming to this area is the Rebel's Great Shield. There's also a sort of quasi-shortcut there. The iron key that we found under the flaming bullhead will also open this door, So it's possible, if you are so inclined, to come in through this way. I don't recommend it because then you don't have any ranged advantage against the lizards at all. It does make getting out pretty easy, though. That area is entirely optional, much like a connection to Steam. That's what I get for recording on a Tuesday. And the rewards are good, but they're not super worth it, so if you find yourself just stymied by the salamanders, don't feel like you need to throw your head against this area. If you really wanted the Great Shield, you could simply open the door from the other side, dash in and get it, and then just retreat before you can get killed. Now, the Rebel's Great Shield is unique because it has pretty darn bad physical resistance, even for like a medium shield. However, you will see that it has sky-high resistances to literally all magical elements. If you're going up against a spellcaster, and you don't really feel like dodging around, then the Rebel's Great Shield is easily your best choice. For just random ho-hum, spear-pokey combat, you're better off with just basically anything else. But those resistances are crazy! Now, the Hawk Ring, as well as extending arrow range, might be a reference to the first game, much like the old Leo Ring. However, the descriptions make no mention of the first owner of that ring, so perhaps it's a different ring entirely. It doesn't really matter. Now, our business in the forest is concluded, but we still have a couple things left to do. Nothing really interesting happened in Majula, so no need to look at that. We're back in the Iron Keep for a little bit to explore the last little bit of Molten Ground. And our mad scramble for the boss last time, we didn't really get around to it. Off to a wonderful start. Old Ironclads are not difficult opponents, but like basically everything in this game, if you're not careful, they can either kill you or send you on a one-way trip into the magma. Now, for this, you want to equip all the best fire resistance equipment that you have, as well as equip Flash Sweat. Just the same as you did for all the other Molten Floors. It's more important for this one, I think, though. One day backstabbing will make sense. Today is not that day, but we can hold out hope. Now, we really don't want those guys shooting at us while we're already traversing an extremely hazardous environment, so even if you're just here to pick up some goodies, it's worthwhile to take those guys out. If it doesn't kill you outright, a great arrow can very easily send you into the lava. Sort of a running theme of this place. Now that we are sufficiently doused, we can explore the bottom area here that we can see, I don't want to say safely, but without immediately dying. Now, this stretch of molten rock is long enough that I actually recommend popping a life gem. The regeneration will help offset the fact that you're on here for an eternity. I wouldn't recommend doing it in one trip either. Our ultimate reward for that is a Fire Seed and Chaos Storm. Both very useful articles. Chaos Storm is a lot like Firestorm, except more so. It has less uses, though. While we're still buffed up with fire defense, we can simply dash through that little magma rivulet and not take any damage whatsoever. That's definitely an option if you end up accidentally hitting all of those triggers and you don't feel confident in your ability to jump over them. That concludes our business in Iron Keep, for the most part. Back in Majula, let's repair everything.
If you make it back.
May you level up a little bit. Try and forget the mistakes of our past with the human effigy. Rearrange rings. It's not an especially flattering thing to say, but a lot of this game is spent in menus, and I really don't mean that as a bad thing. However, we're now back out of the menu and going back once more into very dangerous territory. There is one last thing to do in Iron Keep. At the very beginning of the stage, you can see that treasure off in the distance over the magma platforms. This is far and away the most difficult one to get, and far and away the one that will probably make you die. Simply because not only do you have to deal with damage over time from the hot coal, you have to deal with gravity too. One of the difficult things about this trek is that the necessary water to douse yourself is hidden behind more than a few Awan Knights. So the time investment for going after this is not insignificant. Fortunately, the geographical distance is pretty short. As an aside, dripping with water will not only boost your fire defense, but it will weaken your lightning defenses. This comes up in a couple of places throughout the game, so don't just roll into water jars willy-nilly. It can punish you. Speaking of getting punished, after a couple of failed attempts, here is a successful one. The jumps here are difficult because if you do it a little too late, you are entirely liable to go rolling off the side. Just Take the damage, take the time, line up your jump, cry a little bit because your reward is only a bonfire ascetic, and then homeward bone out. Definitely the least worthwhile of these little segments where you have to make yourself immune to fire. But I'm nothing if not thorough. That should do it for now. Next time, we have a bit of mayhem planned. See you then.